courses, government buildings, yards. I mean, it truly is an invisible revolution. And psilocybe strictipes looks very similar to psilocybe semilanceata. I don't have time to get into all the nuances, so I need to jump ahead here. But many of these temperate psilocybin active mushroom species in the genus Psilocybe have a cap, which means that the cap is really, when it's wet, it's real dark, but then as it dries, it fades to yellow. So that is one of the key features in the temperate psilocybin active species. It also has many of them, including linoformans, including semilanceata, and strictipes, have a separable gelatinous pellicle, which when you break the cap and break it apart, you can see this translucent skin. Okay, thank you. And this is what it looks like under the microscope. And this gelatinized layer is a predominant taxonomic feature. But these are kind of the minor features, and I'm going to show you some of the more major features here in a second. So at the Psilocybin State College near Olympia, Washington, where Jonathan and I went to school, this person is not looking for a contact lens. This is the Psilocybe mushroom stoop, as we know it. And it's characteristic when you see a student do this, it's a call, to all other students to come help. The difficulty in the Northwest is because it was recently totally forested. We have wood chips on the ground, and then lawns are laid on top. So those of us who wanted to write habitat-specific field guides, where we'd say, in the fields, Psilocybe semilanceata grows, in wood chips, Psilocybe cyanescens grows, it becomes very complicated because you could find wood-decomposing mushrooms like cyanescens, Ambiocystis, etc., growing in areas that have lawns. So it becomes very problematic. But these lawns are fantastic because of the wood chips underneath and the sprinkler systems that come on all the time. So it's a beautiful, beautiful environment encouraging psilocybin mushrooms to grow. So at the Evergreen State College, where I was doing my research, I could literally walk out of the laboratory building, and within 20 feet, no exaggeration, I could find 4 different species in the genus Psilocybe. And I know now that from the reports of my professor, who's a very straight individual, he has 5 or 6 species growing in his yard at home. And he asked me, where do they come from, Paul? And I said, geez, Mike, you have all these mushrooms laying around your office all the time. Where do you think they came from? So clearly they impregnated his clothes, and he went home and threw out his garbage or mowed his yard or tended his garden, and he spread his spore mass. So, humans are vehicles for spreading psilocybe spores. Now, humans have a peculiar and an unfortunate characteristic. There's no other organism on this planet who creates greater debris trails in the environment than humans. We're devastators. We should be Homo sapien devastators or something, as our name, because we go through environments where we wreak havoc. But the psilocybin active mushrooms have developed a very quick and unique response. They hitchhike on the activities of humans. So the chipping of wood, the laying down of lawns, allow these species to predominate. So these mushrooms are growing now, sometimes to the exclusion of other species. So a species that is unique to Washington and Oregon and British Columbia is Psilocybe stuntzii, named after Daniel Stuntz. And I don't believe there's any reports in Europe. It's very similar in some ways morphologically to cyanescens. I don't think so, but just as a general morphology. And this is my professor's backyard, and it has an annulus, or a ring on the stem here, that turns bluish. A species unfortunately growing in the same habitat is a deadly poison species by the name of Galerana autumnalis. So in the Northwest, there was great concern for accurately showing people how to distinguish between psilocybes and galerinas. Galerinas produce rusty brown spores. Psilocybes produce purple-brown spores. And that is the first and primary significant feature that you need to know in trying to identify psilocybin mushrooms. All mushrooms in the genus Psilocybe produce purple-brown spores, like you saw earlier, with the spore prints of Psilocybe cubensis on the hat and on the paper. Galerinas produce rusty brown spores. This is a ring of death, is what I call it. Enough Galerinas to probably kill 12 people, with the late Stephen Pollock here in front of it. And so there's major concerns because I took this photograph, and here's Psilocybe stensia growing side by side with with Gallerina adenonalis, so close that the mushrooms are touching each other. And we put out the warning in the 1970s, and there was actually physicians discouraging information, and mycologists discouraging the spread of accurate information identifying psilocybin mushrooms because they were prejudiced against the people who were collecting them. And it was a violation, frankly, of their medical code to discourage people to how to accurately identify these mushrooms. So several books, including my own, warn people about that, but unfortunately several people have died in North America from mistakenly eating the Gallerinas. Okay, so I'm going to finish up here in about 5 minutes, if I can. This is one of the species that I published with Dr. Gaston Guzman, and it's called Psilocybe cyanofibulosa. And it grows site-specifically underneath rhododendrons. So if you come to Washington or Oregon or British Columbia and you want to find psilocybe mushrooms, go to a rhododendron garden. It's the easiest place to find them. Rhododendron gardens use lots of wood chips. They use cardboard to suppress weeds. They tend to have lots of shade, multiple canopies, perfect environments for encouraging psilocybe mushrooms to grow. And Psilocybe cyanofibulosa is named because blue hairs on the stem, and the blue hairs turn slightly blue. They're bruised bluish. And the cap can expand to fully plane, and it's non-undulate, very different than cyanescens. And the bruising here. And it has bifurcate, or a splitting chylocystidia, which is a microscopic feature on the gills, which distinguishes this species from a whole group of other psilocybe species that look generally similar. And then this is the second and most significant feature, and most all of you are aware of this, is that mushrooms which contain high amounts of psilocin, or psilocin, however you want to pronounce it, bruise bluish. So the combination of having a purple-brown spore print and the fact that mushroom bruises bluish, those two conditions met, without a doubt, you have entered into an arena of psilocybin-active species. There's some bluing Strophareas, which are not poisonous and are questionably psilocybin-active or somewhat similar, but 98% of the species that are psilocybin-active, that are potent, that produce psilocin, have this bluing reaction. So if you pick a mushroom that has purple-brown spore print and it bruises bluish, then try it, eat it. It's not going to be a poisonous mushroom. It'll be a psilocybin-active mushroom probably. This is Psilocybe beocystis, which is a very rare and hard to find species in Washington, and it blends in with the background, and it's also very, very potent. And there's lots of stories associated with this that I don't have time to get into. Another example of Psilocybe beocystis. And one of the more exciting mushrooms, which we have here in Europe, is Psilocybe cyanescens, and this is one of my favorite mushrooms to eat. And it has an undulating margin that's like a sine wave for you mathematicians out there, and it's something that is very, very easy to identify. And for my own sacred mushroom patches, I like to build shrines. Many of us do, and this is my mushroom shrine, and this Psilocybe cyanescens growing at the base of it. And I don't, grow many psilocybes. I don't need to. I mean, I don't even need to possess them. I can go out into the wilderness or into the cities and find them. So, I mean, there's like no reason for me to even grow them anymore because they're so easy for me to find. Now, there's a peculiar circumstance that if you're in the city and you can't find a rhododendron garden, where do you go in September and October and November in the state of Washington, Oregon, and British Columbia?